Blood, there has been a reported murder. A 911 call was placed by James, the victim's husband, around 9:33 a.m. Police and ambulance are currently on scene treating the victim, who was found unresponsive and covered in blood. The neighbor, Mr. DeWitt, told us that he heard arguing around 7:20 a.m., followed by a loud noise. Investigators are currently on scene. When using gel electrophoresis to compare DNA, restriction enzymes become very handy. They're able to help gain more information about the subtle differences in a person's DNA. Restriction enzymes cut the DNA into fragments that can differ in lengths at a specific sequence. Depending on the DNA of the individual, it may cut more than once. Gel electrophoresis sorts the person's DNA based on the length of the cut segments from the restriction enzymes. Those segments show up as bands. Those bands can be compared with the other DNA samples run to find matches or similarities.
Action.
Once more information was found, we were able to test Olivia's blood, her unborn child, Frank's, James, and the rake's blood, using a different restriction enzyme. We can confirm that James' blood was found on the rake as shown in rows 6 and 7. We can also conclude that the unborn child in row 4 is Frank's son. As shown here, we can find similarities in both the victim and Frank's blood. When we ran the DNA from the possible suspects and the blood found at the crime scene, the results are as follows. In lane 1, we have the victim's blood. In lane 2, we have the blood found underneath the victim's fingernails. In lane 3, we have the blood found on the ground. In lane 4, we have the blood on the flower pot. In lane 5, we have James's DNA. In lane 6, Kenny's DNA. Lane 7, Frank's DNA. And lastly, Dee's DNA. Now, the results tell us that lane 2, 3, and 5 have the exact same banding patterns. That means that James's blood was on the ground and underneath the victim's fingernails. Now we can also see that lanes 4 and 8 additionally have the same banding patterns. That means that the blood found on the flower pot was Dee's blood.
Next is the process of blood typing. You put antibody A in the A slot, B in the B slot, and RH in the RH slot. Then stir the mixtures. If the mixture agglutinates or becomes foggy like the mixture in the B slot, it is that blood type. As an example, for this mixture, the blood type of this person is B negative. My name is Dawn, and today I'll be giving you a report on blood typing. According to my notes, the blood found on the west wall, the ceiling, and the rake was AB positive. Since our victim was AB positive, we know that this blood must have came from her when she was hit 4 times with the rake. Our suspect, James Herman, is blood type A positive, and his blood was found on the part of the rake grab where you grab it with your hands. And his blood was also found in the victim's hand and the spatter on the ground. The spatter on the ground was passive blood, and it was a force pushed down by gravity. This evidence proves he was at the crime scene, is most likely the killer of Olivia Long. Court.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, and I'm here to talk about the fingerprint analysis for the case of Olivia Long. So we have our suspects, Kenny, Dee, Frank, and James. Now, before we get into the fingerprint analysis, I'd like to talk about the minutia, which helps us identify some parts of the finger. We have a purification, a dot, an enclosure, an ending ridge, a short ridge, and a delta. Now for the fingerprint analysis. On mug number 1, it was James's right pointer finger. It was a plain arch with an ending ridge. On mug number 2, it was Olivia's right index finger, and it was a loop that opened up to the right with a delta. For door number 1, it was Frank's right middle finger. It was a whorl with 2 deltas and a dot. On the watering can, it was Dee's left index finger. It was a loop that opened up to the right with a delta. On the flowering pot, it was Dee's right index finger with a plain arch. On the counter, it was Olivia's left middle finger with a loop that opens up to the left. On the rake, it was James's left thumb. it was a loop that opens up to the left with a delta. And finally, on door number 2, it was Dee's right index finger with a plain arch. So with this information, we are able to cancel out Kenny because his fingerprints were nowhere to be seen. We can cancel out Dee and Frank because their fingerprints were only on the gardening tools and on the door when they were putting away the supplies. So that leaves us left with James. Hi, I'm Lizzie, and I'd like to talk about the hair sample analysis. So before I get into whose hair belongs to who, I would like to talk about the characteristics that go with hair. So in the outside layer we have the cuticle, then we have the cortex inside, and then we have the medulla, which makes the pattern inside of hair. So with Olivia's hair, she's blonde hair with a thin cuticle. James's hair, which is also blonde, with a thicker cuticle. Frank's hair, which also has a thicker cuticle and is blonde. And Kenny with brown hair. I was able to use this information and determine whose hair belonged to who found at the crime scene. So hair found by the victim's head was Olivia's. By the south exit was an animal's hair that probably fell off the clothing of Dee or Frank. Near the left elbow was James's hair, and near the flower pot was James's hair.
When we got to the crime scene, we categorized and processed the evidence using a grid pattern. We started by looking at the pot, shovel, and dirt. On the pot, there was a fingerprint, and it belonged to Dee Flowers, which came from when she pricked her finger on a sharp stick. The dirt was knocked over during the scuffle between our prime suspect, James Herman, and Olivia. The blood spatter on the wall and ceiling, as mentioned, are cast-offs, 3 of them, belonging to Olivia. The blood on the rake head also belonged to the victim, so we can infer that she was hit 4 times on the head with the rake. The bloody handprint on the rake belonged to James, the victim's husband. The blood spatter on the ground also belongs to James, and there are also scratches on his neck, so we can infer that during the confrontation, Olivia scratched James on the neck. The white powder on the counter was discovered to be powdered sugar, which spilled on the counter and floor. We discovered this by doing white powder analysis. We tested known substances with water, hydrogen chloride, ferric chloride, and iodine. From there, we analyzed and compared the substances with the mystery powder, and we discovered the mystery powder to be powdered sugar. We also discovered a death note that read "die." We figured out what the note was written out of using ink chromatology. We tested no markers with chromatology paper to see what color trail they left. We then did the same with the ink from the paper. We extracted the ink off the paper and put it on chromatology paper. We then diluted the ink with water and alcohol. We then compared the known marker colors with the mystery ink and discovered that the note was written with a praying marker. A praying marker was also discovered in the Herman household.
As you can see here for the autopsy, we did an autopsy over Olivia. We found that there were bruising on both of her arms. She had a laceration on the back of her skull about here. And then when we did a toxicology report, we found 177.6 milligrams of sodium cyanide, 302.3 milligrams of caffeine in her body, which caffeine won't do anything, but the cyanide definitely will.
We also discovered that Olivia was 4 weeks pregnant with a son. Using gel electrophoresis, we discovered that the baby's father was Frank Flowers.
She was? How's Mr. Herman? Does he know?
Yeah, I knew.
An affair!
If James found out that the baby wasn't his, then this gives James Herman a motive to kill his wife.